All right. I'm not sure, but I think I'm live right now. Um, okay, so I'm just gonna have to check this. I'm gonna have to double check it because uh, please send me like a message or something in the chat saying if you can see me. I think it should be all good now. All right, so I just did. This is the first time I'm streaming on YouTube, and I just spent an hour, no, 2 hours actually, streaming, I thought, here on YouTube. But it turns out that I didn't actually turn on the stream because I can actually show you this. Um, so this is what the stream, I don't know, site thing looks like. And there's something up here that said like go live. I didn't press that. So I've been streaming for 2 hours, I thought, and I didn't actually turn on the stream. So I actually ended the stream, and when I ended it, I went to like check to see if I could watch the stream back to kind of see how it was. And it turns out that I didn't start it. So I've been sitting here for 2 hours doing very, very poorly because the idea that I had for the stream was super shitty. I was going to just basically show you this project that I've created that's an open source project. And then I was going to just like see how it was. Wait. And then I was going to go through and kind of like start working on it, create all these issues. Like all of these things that you can see here, I've created during that stream that I thought I was doing. And as I was streaming, I kind of realized that that was a super shitty idea because this is like the most boring part to actually watch someone do, is to watch someone create issues or to-dos for a project. But I kind of just wanted to get started because I've been pushing this for a couple of days now. And so, I don't know, I've been kind of anxious about getting back into streaming and doing like live anything, because that's not really my thing usually. But I've been like getting away a little bit from programming. I haven't done as much programming as I would like to. So I kind of figured that this would be a good way for me, or a good incentive for me, to get back into programming, because if I start streaming, then it kind of has a second purpose as well, because then I can do this stream and maybe some people will watch it, maybe someone will get something out of it, maybe someone will learn something, or maybe someone can teach me something, like how to stream. But it'll kind of serve several purposes instead of just me coding on my own on some project, which I think is a good idea. But that kind of means that I've been sitting here for 2 hours doing this super boring work, that's not super interesting, that I don't really feel like I should keep doing, because the last thing that I said in my stream that I thought I did was that this was not a good idea to start streaming today, because I don't know enough, to be honest, about open source projects, about how to structure a project, how all of those processes kind of work. I know the basic principle of like open source projects, that, okay, anyone can contribute to a project like that. And yeah, I guess that's kind of what I know about it. So in like when I started doing all of this, I kind of realized that there's so many question marks about how this project is actually going to be created, and like what we need to do and how to do it, that it just doesn't really make sense to start streaming before I kind of get some of those base things. I understand those base things myself. But what I can do is I can kind of explain what this project is. It's an open source project that I created that I sent out in my Clean Code Friday. It's a newsletter that I send out every Friday. And in that I explained that I've started this open source project. And the idea behind it is that you should be able to, or the idea is to create something where you can essentially automate the process of booking appointments with different people. So that could be something like, for instance, for me, since I'm doing YouTube and stuff, a lot of people are emailing me about different meetings they want, that whether it's like a phone meeting, a video conference, or just a meeting in real life. And it can also be just with friends. It kind of gets really difficult to actually book those things. And it's usually a lot of like back and forth, where you send a message and you say like, okay, I'm available at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. And then they send back and they say, okay, I'm not available at that time. Are you available on Wednesday? And then you say, no, I'm not available. And then it's just like a lot of back and forth. But what I wanted to create is essentially something where instead, when you get a question about like a meeting or something like that, you can send back a link to a site, and that site will then have like a calendar or something where you've already put in like available time spots. And then for those time spots, someone can book one of those times. So essentially, you don't have to go back and forth saying like, okay, I'm available on this day, and then they're not available. They can just go to that site and they can see when you're available, and then they can kind of fit that into their own schedule, so they can see themselves when they are available compared to the times that you have available. Available is really difficult to say, apparently. Yeah, so that kind of takes a lot of that back and forth out of it. And that's something that's not only useful, I think, for booking appointments. I think it's also useful for when you're with friends. Like, for instance, we've been playing some paddle tennis, and it's been really difficult to kind of book that because we're like 4 people, and trying to fit something like that into the schedule of 4 different people is really difficult. So if you would have had something like this where you could just see like when everyone's available, and then you can see where that kind of converges, would be really, really good to have. So that's the idea. So here's kind of the use case that I've created. User 1 gets an email from user 2 wanting to book a meeting, and then user 1 sends back a link to a site, and then user 2 opens up that site and sees a UI with available time slots. And then user 2 can press anytime and create a booking or request a booking. And then user 1 gets an email or a notification about that requested booking. And then user 1 can disapprove or approve that booking. So that's kind of how the thing should work. And essentially, this is like a recruitment thing. I'm trying to look for people who want to help me build this thing. So that's the idea. I think this should be a website. That's kind of what I came up with, or that's the idea that I came up with, is for this to be some sort of website where you create an account, and you then have your own calendar where you can add in different time slots where you're available. And then you can send a link to your site, similar to like YouTube. If you go to someone's YouTube page, you can see all the videos that they've produced, but you can't upload videos on their page. So that's kind of how this should work. You should be able to send a link to your calendar, which would be like someone's YouTube site, and they'll be able to see all your available slots, but they can't change your available slots, but they can request a meeting for one of those available slots. Yeah. So that's the idea. So it's going to be some sort of website, I think. I think that's what makes most sense. Yeah, so Sebastian Yusang, I don't know how to say your name, but he said you can start as a website and make an app later. And I think that's a good idea. That's kind of what I was thinking, is that this could potentially be an app as well. But first of all, it's going to be a website. And I'm not good at all at making websites. So that's also kind of an issue. That's why I need some help with that as well. But this is the project. Book-O-Matic is what I called it. A really great name. And basically right now we only have like a README that's really basic. There's nothing super interesting here. We've already had a couple pull requests submitted. Most of them have fixed my horrible README file that I created and the spelling mistakes and whatever else I did. But that's great. That's what I want. And also someone submitted an idea for a license for this project, which we've added as well. And this is, again, goes to show like I don't know too much about open source software, but, or rather, since I don't know that much about it, I don't know exactly how the licensing works. I think it works in some sort of way to make sure that, yeah, I don't know. I shouldn't say anything because I don't know how it works. But you can go to this project board here. That's what I worked on for the other stream. And you can press the Book-O-Matic project board. And then you get to something like this, which I've based on a Scrum style of like project management. I think that's what it's called. And essentially here we have to-dos. So these are things that we need to do. And then this is a column of ready things. So these are things that are ready to get started with right now. And then this is the column of in progress, and this is completed. So essentially any one of you, if you want to contribute to this, you can just basically take one of these things. If you feel like, okay, I'm really good at creating sign-in pages in some framework for building websites, then you can basically go here and you can take that, you can put it in progress, and then you can assign it to yourself. I think you have to go into it to do that. Yeah. So you can go into it and see assignees, and then you can assign it to yourself. I'm not sure if you can do that. I can do it, but I created the repo as well, so I'm not sure if you can do that. I think you can. Yeah, so that's the idea. Essentially, you can grab anything from the ready pile and you can start working on it if you want to. I will be doing that as well. And the ones that are in to-do are things that are needed to be done, but that aren't really that aren't ready to get done right now. Like for instance, you can't really start working on the functionality of a calendar on the site before you have actually created the calendar. So that's kind of the system that I went with. I think that it's also ordered by like the most important thing is on the top and the least important thing is on the bottom. Yeah, so, and this should also work in conjunction with like your calendar. I'm going to use like Google Calendar is going to be the base for it. But then ideally at some point it should be able to work with all different calendars, or most of them at least. So like that would be things like the Apple calendar and yeah, whatever other calendar you could use. And it should basically, so that when you approve the appointment, it should get automatically added to your Google Calendar or your calendar of choice as well. So it kind of becomes seamless, so you have to do as little as possible. And the thing that's kind of left to do, or that's kind of really important to do, is to decide a couple things, like how to, or what framework to actually use for this project. Since it's going to be basically a website to start with, I'm not actually, like I said, I'm not an expert at all in making websites, so I don't know which one is the best one to actually use. But that's also something that we're probably going to need to figure out before any of this gets started with, because let's say that someone starts with the creating the sign-in page, and they do that in Django and Python, and then someone else starts creating the calendar, and they do that in React Native or React, then that's going to be very, like, that doesn't make any sense to have two different frameworks for those two pages. So yeah, there are some things that still need to kind of be created and decided, I guess. And then also I'm not sure, that's where I still need to read up a little bit more on how all of this works, because I don't know where to put any of this information. Like, should you put the information about what framework we're going to use in the README file so that it's like available as soon as you open the repo? I think that's kind of how you do it. I was watching this video about, it's got a weird title. Oh my God, how do I get started with an open source project? But it had some good things in it about how to kind of think about how to work with open source. And he kind of explained things that are needed or things that are important for to be included in a README file. I think we can do like a poll or something because about like the framework to use, because I have no actual knowledge of any of the frameworks. So to me, it doesn't really matter which one we use. It's not going to be a super difficult website either, because it's just going to be essentially, someone actually added a pull request adding in a mock-up design for the website. Color scheme and all that stuff can of course like be changed, but I think this was a pretty good design for the idea of it. I added this. And essentially this would be what it would look like, I think. So you sign in and then you get to a page like this. Not sure if this is going to be here for you as a user, but I think maybe something like along these lines. And essentially you get this calendar here that you can see. And then you can go through and like add in different times when you're available. So let's say that we were available from 2 p.m. till 3 p.m. on Wednesday. We add that in here. And then someone else can go to the site and they will see a UI that looks like this, where they can press this time and then they'll get a pop-up window or something like that, like this, where they can type in their name, company, phone number, email, and then a message or something, and then they can send it. And this is essentially sending a request for a meeting, and then I'll get notified about someone wants to have a meeting on this time, and then I can approve it or disapprove it, and then it'll get added to my Google Calendar. But yeah, so this is essentially as difficult as this website is going to get, which is not super difficult, I don't think. It's difficult for me. I'm super bad at doing the UI stuff for websites, but it really isn't a super difficult website to build. And I'm thinking that we're going to use like probably Firebase for the backend, because it's pretty simple to use Firebase, and I don't know how many people are actually going to use something like this. So I think it makes sense to just use Firebase for the backend, because we don't want to just start out assuming that 1 million people are going to use it. Hopefully, like, because I think that Firebase works pretty well for like a fair amount of people. So I think Firebase will be good. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of those kind of things that still need to be decided and worked out. And what I was doing in the other stream when I thought I was streaming was I was essentially creating different milestones. So one of those was create basic calendar and user can sign in. And able to add events in Google Calendar. Essentially what a milestone is, in case you don't know how that works, and I'm not super knowledgeable on this either, but essentially what it is that if we take a look here, we can have some of the requirements. So should be able to add events in Google Calendar. Or let's take another one actually. So let's say the fact that a user should be able to add available times into their calendar. That's kind of a big task because there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. We have to create the UI for the site, first of all. We have to create the functionality for actually adding something. We have to create just the functionality. Like there's a lot of different things that kind of go into something like that. So instead of having one issue that's really big, you kind of break it, or one task that's really big, you break it down into several like subtasks, and then that subtask or those subtasks make up that big task. So for instance, if it's like what I did was I created a milestone called create basic calendar, and for this milestone there's 4 different issues or subtasks of this main task. And that is, first of all, we need to create just a calendar UI. So we need to have some sort of UI for the calendar. And then we need to create functionality for adding an event to the calendar. We need to create functionality for removing an event from the calendar and for requesting an appointment. So those are the 3 main things that we need to create. And really, you could probably break these things down into even smaller subtasks. But I didn't do that. This is where I kind of left it. And for each issue that I created, I also created a little description where I kind of I think it's good practice to add in some information about like when is this issue actually done. Oh, I need to drink something. Okay, so the reason that you want to add in some sort of requirement or some sort of definition of when this task is done is because if someone else works on this task, then it's really important for them to be able to know like, okay, have I completed this task, or is there something else that still needs to get done? And this is something that I'm not super good at, like defining exactly how this should work, because that's also one of those things that I kind of need to read into a little bit more, is like how to actually structure a GitHub or an open source project, which is like this article that I Googled as well. Because I think that this is something that's super important to actually do, especially for an open source project, because usually what you do is you kind of end up like, or what I usually do is I start a project and I kind of just start working on it. And then halfway through, I realize that, okay, I need to do something like totally different in the beginning of this project. And I have to rewrite a lot of the code base to make that work. And this is something that you kind of want to avoid. If you do these steps properly and like create the issues and the milestones and all of that stuff, if you do that really thoroughly, then that makes it a lot easier further down the line when you actually start coding the thing out. And essentially also, this helps you kind of think through all the different steps. So you have to think through like, okay, what do we need? What needs to get done, and like how does that get done, and all the different steps involved in getting that done. And once you think through all those steps, you kind of create a structure for the project that you're about to create. And once you've created a structure for that project, it's a lot easier to kind of take one of these things, like take one of these issues and start working on that, because then it's really defined to that specific area, if you will. Because it's really easy when you're coding something to just like work a little bit on this thing and a little bit on that thing, and then you're pretty much working on everything all at once. instead of just like narrowing it down and focusing on the thing that you're actually meant to do. And that also makes it really a lot easier to test the code that you write, and makes it easier to avoid like introducing bugs. And yeah, it just makes it easier to kind of write cleaner code, if that makes sense. Oh, I feel like my voice is just not taking this right now. So I think that, again, like the stream that I did before, I kind of ended that on saying that I kind of need to read into this a little bit more and try to figure out some more issues and decide on a framework to use for the project, which I think we can create a poll for, so that anyone can like vote on. Actually, let's do the poll right now no, wait, that doesn't work. I'll create a poll and I'll upload it to a community post on this channel, where you can like kind of decide, or where you can vote on which framework we should use for this project. And yeah, I think that that's gonna be the best way to do it, for me to just kind of spend some time to understand this a little bit more. I wanted to just kind of explain what this project is about, and explain and introduce this open source project, so that in case anyone wants to give this a go, you now know of it and you can try it and help out if you want to. I'm so like not prepared for this. It was the thing of like starting the stream before, streaming for 2 hours, and then realizing that I didn't actually start the stream, and then now getting into it again, it kind of just threw me off a lot. And that's kind of the unpreparedness that I had today. But the idea with this stream is simply to just like I'm going to be coding. I kind of like to watch other people code. There are a few people that do some live stream coding on YouTube, and I really like to just have that on in the background sometimes when I code, because I feel like that kind of motivates me to code and inspires me to work a little bit. So that's kind of what I wanted to provide as well on this channel, while simultaneously coding myself and actually learning new things and like progressing a little bit. So I hope that this will be somewhat interesting for you guys to watch. I'm sorry that this was like a super short stream and like really probably seemed really unorganized, and it was really unorganized and everything. I don't know. But I think this will be exciting, and I think that next time we're going to get started on actually building something. But now you know what the project is, and I will also be coding any other project that I come up with. The idea being that I just want to have this as a channel where if I feel like coding something, I can just go live and start coding. And yeah, that's kind of the idea. I don't know how to end this now. I feel like everything just turned out really weird with the stream. But it's the first one of hopefully of many. And yeah, let's see. Okay. So yeah, I think that will probably be it for today. Feel free to go. There will be a link in the description to this repository in case you want to go check it out as well, and see if there's some issues that you could add, some milestones that you could add, maybe some thoughts that you have about the project as well. I really just appreciate any help that you can provide. And also, you don't need to be an expert at all at doing this. You don't have to feel intimidated by any of it. Even if you just want to give it a go and like try something, then feel free to do that. Just fork this repository and try it and see how it goes. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. But yeah, thank you for watching this stream. I really appreciate anyone who stopped by to watch it, even if you just did it for a short minute or so. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think that's it for this first stream. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.